There is a podcast for absolutely everything. So I think what makes this one different is that it's very purposefully targeted for people to kind of be here no matter what stage their journey. There are no hoops to jump when it comes to this podcast. Like, really, no matter where you are in your journey, this is the place where you are welcome to tell your story.
You know what? We about to take off.
Welcome back to Before We Take Off. Now, today's episode is a little different. Usually, Mufaro over here is the one asking the questions, but for this special season 1 reflection episode, we're turning the mic around. We'll be looking back behind the scenes at the first season of Before We Take Off. The guests, the lessons, the behind the scenes moments, and some questions submitted by you on Instagram. Mufaro, welcome to your own show, man.
Rhys, thank you, man. Thank you so much. It's wow, what a feeling to be the guest. Now I know how the rest of my guests feel. But yeah, thank you for doing this reflection episode with me.
Yeah, of course, man. Well, first of all, I wanted to say congratulations. Season 1, all done and dusted. I know that you've had a massive impact on the socials, on all across the different landscapes of the internet. And I just want to say, how are you feeling now that season 1's over?
Yeah, dude, it's crazy. Like when I started this, I didn't know what the heck I was doing. It's not my first time like hosting a podcast, but definitely my first time running one from the ground up. So yeah,
Mm,
we're down one season, 10 episodes in the bag. Season 2 is pretty much all locked in. But it feels good. It really does feel good. And look, I'm just happy that I've been able to kind of bring this vision to life the way it's come through. So yeah, really happy with it.
yeah, of course, man. Now, something I want to know, Mufaro, is did it feel real from the beginning? Now, you mentioned that, this is your first time sort of running the podcast things, doing all the behind the scenes. Would you say that having your hands as deeply in it as you have had, that sort of brought about a different perspective to running this show?
Oh yeah, 100%. I think it's just been I have so much respect now for or I guess so much more respect, I should say, for like content creators and for podcasters and for even the people behind the scenes who do the clips and everything. Like it really does take a lot and it was really hard work. I've got to say, it was really hard work. And there were definitely some weeks where I was like, I don't want to do the podcast today. But it feels nice to it felt nice to record that 10th episode. I kind of
Mm,
got to a point where I was recording episodes well before they were released. So it felt nice to
nice.
record that 10th episode and have that bit of a break, and kind of sit back and like, that exhale to be like, man, it's done. It's it's
Of
finally
course.
done. So that felt nice. But now also just, yeah, being able to kind of look back at the
Yeah.
last 3 months. Is it? Yeah,
Yeah.
2, 3 months that we've been
Yeah.
releasing episodes, and kind of listen. I listen back to every episode as it posts as well. So it's like, yeah, and it feels different. So yeah, it's been a real hard slog. And you know what? I think I'm still starting out. I still consider this a very baby production, a very startup podcast. If you will. So yeah, it's been a great time.
Yeah. Well, let's go back to the beginning, Mafaro. So tell me a little bit about what what was going through your mind when you were making the decision to start Before We Take Off, and sort of what sort of outside influences made you make what creative decisions you did.
That's a great question. I think, look, the funny thing is with this podcast, I was literally at home one Sunday afternoon, sitting on the couch with my wife, and we just both wanted to do some innovating in a sense. So, like, she started a little side project of her own, which I won't delve too much on. But, and then I kind of decided I want to start a podcast. And look, starting a podcast had been something that I'd been umming and ahhing about for a very long time. But then once I sort of settled on this concept and the whole idea of being a platform for emerging creatives, innovators, entrepreneurs, athletes, anyone really, it just took off from there, for lack of a better term.
Mm,
it kind of just, yeah, kept going and snowballing and became this massive thing.
Now, I'd love to talk about the name before we take off. Is that something that was, set from the start? Is that something that you sort of felt evolved as you were recording episodes? And do you think it means the same to you now as it did to you when you were first conceptualizing the show?
That's a great question. I think when I was kind of conceptualizing the whole thing, I don't think it was called Before We Take Off. I can't remember what it was called. Um, See, because I guess that's also the game in podcasting, right? Is like you have to
Mm,
come up with a name that is rememberable, but that is also searchable and hopefully doesn't even exist. So I think
yeah.
like the first few names that I thought of, there were already other podcasts in them. I
Mm,
think the Launchpad was meant to be one of them, in which I think there was already a couple of podcasts called the Launchpad. But in essence, I still got to kind of keep that because I call this environment, I call this set, I call this studio the Launchpad.
yeah.
So it's I still got to kinda keep that essence of that initial name. But yeah,
Mm,
why Before We Take Off? I think it was because just that idea of, we're emerging, we're on the runway, we're on the launch pad, and it's about to be a big thing. And in terms of the meaning of the name, I still think it carries. I still think it carries, and I think it made more sense as the season went on, as the stories were told, as the episodes were released. I think people really got to get the essence of those emerging people's stories and like really
mm,
understand like, yeah, these are people on their way to taking off. These are people who are about to take off. And, some of them, what I love, some of them were like a lot further than others were in terms of their careers. Some of them were, a few years deep. Others were only, a couple of months. Like we had Alatano, whose business by the time we recorded the podcast was not even 6 months. But like she's done really great things with it in that short
yeah.
amount of time. And then we've had people like Frank Mari and Mickey, who are musicians that I've known for, coming up 10 years, and they're well within their journey. So, like, it was kind of nice kind of having that difference in time and difference in like where people's are in their journeys and showing that, there's no timeline for this. There's no fixed timeline. There's nothing
Of
to say
course.
that after 6 months you won't be successful. There's nothing to say that it won't take you 10 years to be successful.
Mm.
And I also think, like, success is a very deep personal meaning to people as well. So, like, people have their own kind of gauge of success as well. And so, yeah, I think it was just great. And I do think that the name kind of carried on as we went through the seasons.
And Mufaro, I like how you pointed out that the variety of guests, both in terms of industry and in terms of current stage where they're at in either their business or their artistic or their athletic endeavors. Something I'd love to know is, were there any through lines for all these people? There were like any consistent themes that you felt were showing up again and again and again that maybe some of your listeners would love to have it like a golden nugget of knowledge that sort of you've been able to assimilate by talking to all these different people.
Yeah, for sure. I think one common theme that kept coming up, and one common theme that I think will probably keep coming up as we go on, is that notion of like, not giving up and not letting yourself down and not letting yourself get in your way of doing great things. I definitely think that was something that kept coming up, and it didn't matter whether I was speaking to a musical artist or an entrepreneur or an athlete or a, foundation founder or a beauty creator. Like that one thing that kept coming up was don't give up. And I think that also hones in on what I wanted this show to be about was like, getting to hear from people. And maybe
Mm,
you are an aspiring artist. Maybe you are an aspiring business founder. Maybe you are an aspiring athlete. And maybe you don't know where to start and you're getting some nuggets from these guys. Maybe you have started and you're at a downside. I mean, look, for me personally, when I started this show, I hadn't been writing music for a very long time. And so for me, hearing people like Beefy Black, hearing people like Mickey, hearing people like Frank Mari, hearing people like Tyra, and kind of hearing their journeys and what they do when they kind of get to that point of not being able to create, for me, that was fantastic. And I want the listeners to have that same experience and have that same kind of relationship, I should say, to the guests and really kind of be, I guess, inspired, hopefully to
Yeah.
create more and do what they do best.
Yeah, of course. Now, Mufaro, this being your first fully produced podcast that you're running, that you're doing all the back end, you're doing all the technical side of anything. Is there anything from a technical, from a social standpoint, from just an interpersonal standpoint that season one taught you about interviewing people?
Yeah. Yeah, great question. I think it was really cool because I am someone who likes to have conversation. I enjoy the art of conversation. So interviewing people actually kind of came easy. I think the biggest lesson that I learned though was it takes a long time to get those guests comfortable, to
Yeah,
get them in a point where, they're fine, kind of just relaxing and telling their story. There was one
yeah,
episode, and I won't say who it is because this is not actually how it panned out, but there was one episode where I asked the first question, and I pretty much ask every guest the first question, which is like, tell us the background, tell us who you are. And they just went straight into the business. They just went straight into what
mm,
they were doing. And I'm like, hang on, pause 1 second. Tell us who you are. Like, tell us
yeah,
what it is that makes you you outside of the business. And I'm like, relax, like, don't worry about the perfect story. Just tell your story.
yeah.
So yeah, I think learning to kind of get people comfortable because look, there are some times and there are some questions that I was asking that required a certain level of vulnerability. And so kind of getting people comfortable so that when I do ask those questions where I'm like, okay, I need you to be really vulnerable right now, it comes a lot easier.
Of course, yeah. And look, Mufaro, something that I can say. I've got a personal relationship with you, and I know for a fact that your ability to sort of draw both that comfort and that sort of being able to listen to people well and being able to navigate questions well around that is something that I've got quite a bit of respect for you, honestly. So I'm really glad that that's been able to come out in a podcast like this. So personal congratulations from me, my friend.
Yeah, no, thank you. Like I said, it's fun. The art of
Yeah,
conversation is one that's dying, especially with how online we are as a society. So it's great
exactly.
to kind of just sit down and, put the phones on silent and just have a conversation.
Yeah, exactly. All right, Mafaro, let's talk some numbers. Now, the show in just one season reached over 2,000 listeners, more than 250 followers across all social platforms, and over 1,700 listening hours. No, sorry, 17,000 listening hours. My bad. How does that feel, Mafaro?
Crazy.
Yeah,
Crazy. Genuinely, I wasn't expecting those kinds of numbers. And look, I am very humbled by those numbers and I'm very grateful about those numbers. A cool thing as well, I was looking at Riverside. So I record the podcast on a platform called Riverside, and it's able to kind of draw in a few various metrics and statistics for me from across wherever the podcast is being posted. A cool thing that I saw is like this podcast has been listened to on like 5 continents. Like
yeah, wow.
literally Australia, Africa, the United States, Asia, and what was the fifth one? Europe.
Europe. Not many Antarctic fans, mate.
Not many Antarctic fans at all, or South American. Actually, no, I
Or
think
South
South
America.
America did make it on the
Yeah,
last
wow.
one. So maybe we're up to 6. But the
No,
point is like how good, right? Like, and I wasn't
yeah.
expecting that. And there are maybe like some people that I can pinpoint and some random countries that came up. Like, I don't know who's listening in Ecuador, but like, welcome
It's
and thank you.
good to have you.
You know what I mean? But, like, it's I mean,
Yeah,
who knows? It could also be someone's VPN, but, like, it's just one of those things where I'm like, I'll take the statistics that I can see, and I'll take the metrics that
of
I can
course.
see, but it feels really cool, and it feels yeah, humbling, and it's great, and I'm just really excited that it's gotten the reach that it's gotten. A lot of people
Yeah.
who launch shows like this and launch podcasts like this, maybe those numbers aren't great to them, and, like,
Mm,
again, everyone has their own measure of success, but to me, like, my hope ultimately has been that the guests are the ones who win in this. So I'm
yeah.
hoping that of those 2,000 listeners, that someone has at least one new follower or one new customer or one new fan. I'm hoping of those 250 followers that they've listened to all 10 guests. I'm hoping that, all those 17,000 listening hours were not just me listening to the show again and again. But, like, it's one of those things where I hope that all of that has returned something for our guests, even if it's just 1% of what they came in with.
Yeah. Of course. Now, I like that you mentioned the platform, Riverside, that we're recording this podcast on. Now, as we've mentioned a few times, your first time sort of delving into that technical BTS, sort of vibe. Is there anything that was a little bit more challenging from the behind the scenes perspective than you were expecting?
Yeah, editing the episode. I think I'm someone who's quite
Yeah.
tech savvy, right? So, like, I'm very comfortable with technology and everything like that. Riverside is a very cool platform in the sense that it really does help me quite a lot when it comes to editing. But, like, yeah, just trying to be
Mm,
careful and trying to make sure that, because sometimes you cut out the fluff, maybe someone's repeated themselves one or two times. And so you're trying to cut it out. But you want to be careful that you're not taking away the essence of what they're saying and you're not taking away, you're not, misconstruing a statement because you've had to make the cut here or there. So, like, I think that's
of
always been the
course.
thing where I'm like, I want to make sure that out of respect to my guests, I am making this as real and as raw as possible.
Yeah. Of course. Now, before posting the first episode, or hey, even before even recording the first episode, did you feel nervous?
Oh yeah, 100%. I think I
Yeah.
recorded well, okay, are we talking about the first episode with a guest or the pre-launch episode that I did, the soft launch?
I'd like to hear about the first episode with a guest because anyone could sit in front of their laptop and talk for a little bit.
Yeah, 100%. I think the first episode with a guest, I was so the first guest was Mutaz, who is a
Hmm.
Richmond VFL player, and Taz was great. And you know what? A little hidden secret about that episode. We actually recorded that episode twice. Because the
Really?
first time there was a whole bunch of audio issues and everything like that,
Yeah,
and
of
I
course.
managed to edit it. But again, like, I want to make it very respectful to the guests, and I want to make it as best as possible for them as well. So I hit
Yeah,
up Taz and I'm like, "Hey man, I'm so sorry, but can we do this again?" And
yeah,
we recorded it. Maybe it released on the Tuesday. We recorded it on the Friday afternoon before that. Like,
yeah, of course.
it was really that crazy. In terms of
Wow.
nerves, like, yeah, like, I think I was nervous because that was the first time I again, not my first time hosting a podcast, but this one was like my project, right? Like, it
Yeah,
was that crazy thing of like, okay, I've asked this person to be part of this and to essentially be the first person that people hear me speak to um on this show and really kind of set the tone for what the show is. So I was nervous that am I doing him justice, but am I doing the show justice?
mm,
So yeah, there's definitely a
of
bunch of
course.
nerves that come with that.
All right. Well, Mufaro, I'd love to talk about the Instagram Q&A. So now you put out to your Instagram followers a Q&A section, something that they were able to respond to and ask you any questions about season one, about following seasons, about anything, or maybe just about you in particular. How about we jump into a couple of those?
Let's do it.
All right. So the first one, how long, which you've already kind of answered in this recording, how long have you been podcasting?
Yeah, for sure. So prior to before we take off, I was involved with this movement called the Conversations Movement, which is very fitting. So with that, I was hosting conversations events in and around Melbourne, and there was a podcast attached to that. So I got the pleasure of kind of hosting a few episodes of that Conversations podcast with some friends. That was probably my first time podcasting as well. So when you count that, it's probably been just under a year. I think the first
Yeah. Wow.
episode was maybe around, sort of June, July last year. So yeah, just under a year podcasting.
Yeah, nice. Well, congrats on coming so far in honestly such a short amount of time.
Thank you.
Yeah, wow. All right, another one. What makes Before We Take Off different to other podcasts?
Yeah, I think again, like with podcasting, there's a podcast for everything, right? Which is why it took so long to come up with this concept. But I think
Mm,
what makes this one different, and there's a bunch of career podcasts as well. So I think what makes this one different is that it's very purposefully targeted for people to kind of be here no matter what stage their journey. There are no hoops
of
to
course.
jump when it comes to this podcast. I'm not necessarily going to wait until you reach a certain point of your career to reach out. And I don't want anyone to wait to reach out to me either. Like, really, no matter where you are in your journey, this is the place where you are welcome to tell your story. Yes, there is a guest form, but the pure purpose of that guest form is just so I can figure out what questions to ask the guest. So yeah, there's no hoops to jump. So I think that's what makes the podcast different is that it can literally be for anybody. And I'm not here to judge anyone's perspective. I'm not here to, tell anyone that their story matters less than someone else's. It
Yeah.
really is kind of just like if you like genuinely, if you have an idea in your head today and you start it tomorrow and you want to come on the podcast on Wednesday, let's do it. Like it's really like that.
Awesome. Nice, man. Well, that's a really commendable concept. Yeah, and honestly, I'm pretty deep into the career podcasts myself, and I can honestly say this is a pretty unique one. So I'm really excited to see where you go with this.
And you know what's like really funny, Reese? Like before this, I probably didn't listen to many podcasts.
Yeah, really.
Which is like a terrible thing because like how can you be a podcaster and you don't listen to them? But like I didn't listen to many podcasts. And like now I do, particularly wrestling podcasts. I love my
Yeah.
wrestling, everybody knows that. But like yeah, I'll listen to a lot more podcasts now, but before this I didn't. So I really came into this blind. I really came into this with the idea of like I just want to speak to people.
And sometimes that's the best way to go about it, so that your sort of your perspective isn't clouded by what other people have done. Being able
Yeah.
to go in this and just going, all right, here's an idea, unique idea. Maybe it's similar to this one, maybe it's slightly different to this one, but just being able to go in and just attack something head on, and yeah, so and I can absolutely say that's what you're doing. Uh,
Yeah, for sure.
Now, Mafo, I've got a question that strikes a little bit close to home. Is the show only featuring people of color guests?
That's a great question. Thank you to whoever submitted that. Look, I think it's a happy coincidence. It's definitely
Mm,
not something that's been intentional. Like, it's definitely something that I noticed, as well to like that a lot of the guests are people of color, but definitely not something that's like intentional. And I don't mean to come across as if, you know, people who are not people of color cannot come on this show. Yeah. I mean, Tyra was on the show.
yeah,
Granted, she is of an ethnic background, but she was on the show. But yeah, like it's definitely for anyone and everyone. I think what's really been cool this season was that I was able to initially tap into my network of
of
friends
course.
and people who I've met along my journey. And so I'm ultimately grateful to them for being so willing to be part of that first season. Because I think that first season it really became a proving ground, and not
Yeah,
only for me, but for the audience as well. So yeah, I think it's just a happy circumstance. But look, black, white, Asian, Hispanic, whatever you are, come on. The show
yeah.
is for you. Absolutely.
If you're from Antarctica, please
If you're
tune in,
from
have a listen,
Antarctica, we need listeners there. So people from Antarctica,
jump
please
in.
come on the show so we can
Can you
your
be
listeners get
like a citizen of Antarctica? Is that a thing that exists?
I don't know, man. People live there, I think. Or
I
people
know
work
people live
there.
there.
Yeah.
Okay,
Like,
well, we'll look that up. Tell us
I
tell us in the
guess
comments.
if you are a citizen of Antarctica, please send me a DM. I would love to speak with you.
Exactly. And then set your VPN to back home and have a listen so that we get every single continent. Um, Mufaro, aside from the technical things that you've mentioned already, what would you say the hardest thing about starting a podcast is?
Hardest thing about starting a podcast is continuing the podcast.
Yeah, of
Let's go back. I mean, the hardest thing of starting anything is getting started, right? And
course.
like I said, this is just getting started. But yeah, like there are definitely some days where, maybe I've come from a long day at work and I have to record an episode that night. And I'm just like, man, ugh, I don't
Yeah,
really want to do this. And that's just because I'm feeling tired or I'm lazy or whatever. But like, because because someone has given me their time to actually be a guest on the show, like, who am I to be lazy and not take up that opportunity to speak to them? And look, every single time that I felt like not doing this and then I speak to it and I record an episode, whoever that guest is that I was speaking to has made me, has just brought it back to life. It's like, yeah, it's worth it. I'm glad I did
yeah,
it. I've only ever had to like reschedule a recording maybe a couple of times. One time is because the guest was unavailable, and one time is because I double booked myself. But,
yeah.
like, every other time, I love to I think being able to do this brings it back. And then, yeah, but, like, obviously, the hard side comes with the fact that, when I've recorded, like I said, last season, I recorded all 10 episodes, maybe about by the time we had released episode, I wanna say 3 or 4, all 10 episodes had actually been recorded, but not
Yeah,
all
wow,
10 had been edited.
of
So,
course.
kinda going back to edit it, and again, like, that behind the scenes, like, sometimes you're like, you record a podcast, you might record, 45 minutes of a podcast. It'll still take an hour and a half to edit it because you're kind of
Yeah,
stopping and starting and doing all of that. But yeah, I think the hardest thing has been keeping it going and that consistency as well. Like, there are
yeah,
some days where you don't want to post on Instagram because you can't be bothered, but you're like, man, again, I have that
gotta
obligation
get
to
the
my
engagement
guest,
up.
that person who's,
Yeah.
yeah, that person who has given me their time. I need to give them back. But yeah, like the answer is I don't know. There's a whole bunch of different answers I could give you to that question.
Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough. Well, a stat that I've heard, and I can't remember the exact numbers, is it's something like 70% of the podcasts on Spotify only have 1 season. Is like so many people start something and it's as you said at the start, it's continuing. And the
Yeah.
fact that you've already got this first season done and the second season locked in, ready to go, planned, we're already moving. I know a few things that aren't necessarily on the table yet, but are working in the background. And yeah, I can certainly say that I reckon this podcast is in itself a before we take off moment.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think like you're right in the sense of when I was thinking about podcast names as well, like I'm pretty sure The Launchpad is a podcast on Spotify with 1 season. I'm like, man, what a waste. Such a great name.
Yeah,
Such a
it's a
great
good name.
name. And you
Yeah.
haven't released an
Hey, look,
episode
man.
in 3 years.
Give it a couple more years, maybe you can DM him and slide over, or maybe before we take off sticks and you become, household name. You never know.
I
I've
mean, I
a
think
lot of podcasts do pivot.
yeah, no, look, I think we're stuck with before we take off. I think it has its own little personality now and it has its
Mhm.
meaning. Like we said in that earlier question, like the show has carried its meaning throughout the season.
Mm.
So I think, yeah, I think before we take off is stuck.
Nice, nice. All right, for another question, I wanna know top 3 lessons from the season. It can be from any of the guests, it can be all 3 from one guest, but I'd love to know top 3 lessons that you've learnt about taking off.
Ooh. There was one that Frank Mari said. He said, play long-term games with long-term people.
Mhm.
I love that one. I almost want to get that a frame in the office here. Play long term game with long term people. What are some other ones? I think it was great to sort of learn from Alitana as well. Again, 24-year-old young businesswoman in the rise. And I think the lesson from her was not necessarily something she said, but just like her attitude and her I guess, direction and the way she carries herself. I ended that episode towards the end. I said to her, I said, thank you for being such an inspiration for so many people.
Of course.
Third lesson. The third lesson probably comes from episode 10, which was with Mickey,
Mm.
where she was talking about finding joy in what she does. And it really had me thinking. I was like, yeah, like you really have to find that joy and you cannot let anything take that joy away from what you do. And I think it's something that applies to all of our guests, something that applies to all of our listeners. Like you really just have to find that joy. So yeah, that would probably be lesson number 3 for me.
Yeah, massive. Now, the next question, what's the hardest thing that you've experienced that you attribute to your success? And the way I'd sort of like to go about this question, Mufaro, is a struggle, like, you get pretty vulnerable on these episodes of your podcast. A struggle or something that you've overcome in your life, in your career leading up to this podcast that you think has made you more resilient or given you an edge in creating this?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think I have to kind of draw it back to why the show started in the first place, in the sense that how many times have I heard no? Or how many
Mm,
times have I not been granted an interview or a radio play or a venue for a gig? Um, yeah, I think there's power in being told no. and the lesson is how you conduct yourself after that. Funny thing, the first ever gig that I ever sold out in Brisbane. So I think we ran it at a venue that did like 120 cap, but we actually wanted to run that show at a smaller venue initially. And that
Really?
smaller venue told us no. They were like, we don't think you have the pull. We don't think you have the audience like to do this. And that shattered me, man. That shattered
Mm,
me. And I was just like, whatever, man. We have to move on. Like, I've told my band we're doing this show. I've found some support acts. I found everything. Like, we just have to do it. We've got
yeah,
this bigger gig. They didn't even ask questions. They were like, sure, here's when sound check is. And
yeah.
we sold it out, 120 tickets.
Nice.
So like almost,
Massive.
almost double, almost
Yeah.
double what that smaller venue was gonna be. Um, so yeah, I think for me, it's just been like, and again, everyone has their own measure of success. I don't think I am where I want to be when I say that I'm successful.
Mm,
And maybe to other people, they view me as successful, and thank you if you do.
mm,
But yeah, like I don't know that I can attribute anything to my success because I don't know that I've gotten that success yet. But in saying that, I think for me, like, yeah, every time I've been told no, it's only been something for me to kind of just get up and keep going. So every time
yeah.
someone said, "No, we don't want you on radio," it's like, "Great. I'm gonna find the next station and the next station, or I'm gonna start my own radio show." Every
That's
time
it.
someone said, "No, we're not gonna listen to your music," it's like, "Great. I'm just gonna keep making it until you do."
Yeah.
Like, it's just been yeah, and I guess purposefully trying to be resilient is probably what I can say.
I can honestly say, Mufaro, that I would tune in to your radio station.
Let's do it, Reese. I think you and I.
I reckon it'd be a lot of fun. I'd do evenings, you do mornings.
No, I think we should co-host.
We gotta fill the whole slot, mate. We'd do together and we'd overlap for sure, but we gotta
Oh,
keep it
so you're
going.
talking about we start our own station and it's just the two
Yeah, mate.
and we just two-man.
I'm sure there's a frequency free. Right between Triple J and Triple R, somewhere in there.
Let's do it. Let's do it. Why not?
Now, another one from the gram, Mufaro, a bit of a controversial one. Do you
Mm.
have a favorite guest or episode?
Ooh, that is a controversial one. You're
Are you
not
even
meant to
allowed to
have
say that?
I don't think I'm allowed to. I don't
Mm,
think I'm gonna plead the fifth on the
fair
favorite
enough.
guest. Do I have a
Mhm.
favorite guest? Maybe I've got a couple. Maybe I've got a couple, but like
Yeah,
like I said, I'm just so grateful to everyone who's been a guest so far, and everyone who's going to be a guest in season 2. Like I said, season 2 is locked in. We've got all I think we're gonna do 11 episodes next season. So we've
ooh,
got
stepping
all
it up, eh?
11. Yeah, yeah, that's it. Each season will just be one episode longer.
Hey, that's pretty good.
It
That's a good goal to set for yourself.
I
That's
mean,
how I try to read books. I say, all
yeah,
right, next year do a couple more. Next read a couple more books. Read a couple more books. Yeah,
yeah, that's it. Like, but it's just gotta keep evolving, gotta keep growing. And like I said, it's about that 1%. But yeah, no,
exactly.
look, I'm grateful to every single guest that has been on the show. Yeah, the favorites, yeah, I don't know. I don't
Yeah.
know. I'm gonna
All right.
land
Well,
at a
let's pivot slightly because the next
yeah.
question ties into this one. Do
Oh,
you
wait,
have a
but before we do that,
dream guest?
sorry,
Oh,
before
sorry,
we do
sorry.
that, favorite episode.
Yes.
I do have a favorite episode
Okay.
only because this episode was with Beefy Black. This
Hmm.
is my favorite episode. And why? Because I think I had become comfortable in the whole like hosting bag and everything. And so
Yeah.
that episode was probably the episode that if you listen back, that's maybe the one that you can say, "Oh yeah, he's locked in."
Yeah. Of course.
That's maybe the one that you can say he's locked in. So I have that's probably my favorite episode. There is also about 12 minutes of that episode that is on the cutting floor
Really?
because we were laughing too much and there's a controversial topic that we spoke about in that we ended up cutting out because we didn't
Yeah.
want to we wanted to make it to episode 9 or episode 10.
Of course. Of course.
But I think that was my favorite episode because like yeah, like I said, I locked in, so I kind of let my guard down a little bit and then we were just talking way too much shit. So yeah, I think that's definitely my favorite episode is the one that I did with Beefy Black. And shout out to Beefy Black. Shout out to
Shout out.
he's actually like I think we're technically cousins. I gotta
Okay.
figure it out. The family tree is kind of wild, but I think we're technically
Yeah.
cousins. Yeah.
Yeah. Nice. Nice, man. All right. So then, well, pivoting slightly, as we were saying,
Yeah.
dream guest, and would it be another podcast host, or would it be somebody that already has a established business? Because sort of conceptually, for like, before we take off, sort of lends itself to people that don't necessarily have a platform yet. So
Mm.
is it something that you'd like to take to people that already have a platform that are maybe looking to pivot to a different platform? Sort of, yeah, it's sort of a twofold question of dream
Yeah.
guest and sort of the direction of the podcast.
That's a great question. I think in terms of the dream guest for the current concept and layout of Before We Take Off, I don't think there is a dream guest because the dream guest is kinda everyone. And I know that sounds like a bit of a cop out, but I'm kinda like, I don't know who the dream guest is because, like,
Yeah,
the the pool is so open to, like,
yeah.
literally anybody and anything. So, if I had to choose, like, if someone said, "Gun to your head, you need to have a dream guest for your episode no matter where they're at in their career," it would probably be someone like Trevor Noah.
Yeah, okay.
For those who aren't familiar, South African comedian, used to
He's a
host
funny
The
guy.
Daily Show, real funny guy, used to host The Daily Show, but now actually hosts his own podcast called What Now?
Mm,
Like, I think I'd love to pick his brain on a lot of things entertainment. I'd love to pick his brain on a lot of things, living in the diaspora. Like, I'd love to hear his story. I've heard his story a bunch of times. I've read part of his book. I'm not much of a reader. I've read part of his book. I've heard his comedy shows, his stand-up shows where
mm.
he talks about his story, but I'd love to actually, ask him some more questions. But yes, I think if I had to have a dream guest, perhaps it's Trevor Noah.
Okay, very nice, very nice. Sort of on par with the where the direction that the show is going. Since there's such a focus on people that are joining, like that are just starting their journeys, is there something that you're considering in the future of a where are they now? Maybe a after we've taken off
Yeah,
segment that's coming up.
that's That's a great call, and that's a great suggestion. Thank you for that. It's something that definitely has been on my mind. Funny enough, when I was talking to someone who was a guest in season 1, they were a bit hesitant about being on the show because they were like, "Man, I'm not really doing anything right now." They were like, "I'm a bit stumped with the whole with everything." And I'm like, "That's perfect. Come on the show and tell that story. Tell the story of who you were beforehand, what you're doing, and how you're stumped and how you feel about being stumped and all of that." And then I said, when it all pops back up, maybe season 3, season 4, we'll have you back, and we catch up on what you've been up
Mm,
to since then.
yeah, nice.
So, yeah, that's definitely the hope is that, kinda doubling back with some of these guests. Some of them are doing great things, like, Beefy Black, specifically, he mentioned he hadn't released music in a couple of years, and I've seen his Instagram since after the show, and he's been working on some things, so it's gonna be great that, like, and I hope that people have followed him since then because that they get to
Mm,
kinda see him now, but, like, I can see he's working on something, so, like, he's someone that I'm like, "Alright, cool." In, 2, 3 seasons' time, we jump back. Alatana, again, I keep mentioning Alatana, but, like, Black Curate Collective has only existed for just over 6 months now, almost 7 months. It'd be great to kind of revisit, when they're at 1 year and kind of see what it's been like at that point
yeah,
and where they're up to now. So yeah, 100%. We wanna do updates. We wanna do where are they now? We wanna re-catch up. I wanna create a bit of a community where, not only do the listeners follow these guests and kind of latch onto their stories, but I want them to continue to hear from them again, and that's
yeah.
maybe a value of being part of this community.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. I honestly, I really can't wait to check back in with a couple of your previous guests and really like the scope of the show as we continue to go, as you begin to see, this podcast pop up in successful artists, successful entrepreneurs, successful athletes. I'm really excited to see the range and the network that you get.
Yeah.
And speaking of, you've referenced already that season 2 is locked and loaded. You've got everyone booked in. What can we expect in terms of like, timeline? Is that coming soon? The nature of guests. Any non POCs locked in yet? And do you have anyone? I'm not a guest from the next season, but do you have anyone that looks like me?
That's kinda get me in trouble, Reese. You try yeah, when can we expect season 2? I believe where's the calendar at? If we're looking at the calendar, season 2, I think is coming June 16th, I wanna say is 2.1.
Okay, yeah. That's
Yeah,
good.
yeah,
That's
I
pretty
think
soon.
it's
That's a tight turnaround.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So June 16th. So we've just taken 4 weeks off. Technically, this episode is kinda sitting in the middle of our break. So,
Yeah,
like,
okay.
yeah, you'll listen to this episode, and then about 2 weeks from here is when season 2 will start to drop. And then again, yeah, weekly for the next 10 or 11 weeks after that. So, in
Wow.
terms of kinda guests, expect more of the same. I know last season we didn't really get to hear too much from content creators, so we've got a couple of content creators stepping up to the plate. We've got, yeah, more founders, more creatives outside of like the music world as well.
Mm.
And yeah, some more kind of like more interesting topics. We've expanded a little bit. In terms of the POCs, again, like, yeah, probably a lot of people of
Nice.
color. And non-POCs, again,
They
welcome.
are important stories to tell, though. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, and I think I
It's
think that's
definitely
the
not a
other
bad thing.
thing. That's the other thing, right? Is like to me, maybe that's a reflection of like the people who feel like they need this platform the most.
Yeah.
Um, because I've been so lucky in that I've probably had, I want to say about 50-50 in terms of me personally outreaching to people and people actually reaching out to me.
Yeah, okay.
It's probably been about 50-50. So yeah, I think it's great that if people of color feel like this is a home for them, if they feel like this is that safe space, if they feel like this is the platform for them, 100%, go for it. Like I said, the show is for everybody. So like, yeah, I'm not necessarily limiting it to anyone at all. Anyone is
Yeah.
welcome to come on board.
Yeah, no, and that's I'm really looking forward to season 2, man. Um, beginning to sort of wrap up here, Mufaro, is there anything that you'd like to say to your listeners, your followers, your people on 6 of the 7 continents?
Yeah. I might even look right into the camera for this one, make it all
Look,
dramatic. No, but yeah, to anyone who's listened, who's supported, who's shared, who's reposted, who's commented, who's subscribed, guests who have appeared on the show, like a massive thank you to each and every one of you. This project it's a labor of love, and it's something
mm,
that I'm doing because I love to do it. Doesn't make me any money, and it's not meant to. Like, it's kind of meant to be something that the guests get the most out of. I want, like I said in that pre-launch, in that soft launch episode, I want people to be comfortable and have a space to tell their story because people want to hear it. I certainly do. So I hope I have been fulfilling the purpose of Before We Take Off to each and every one of you who have listened, who have supported, but each and every one of you who have also appeared on the show. I hope that it has been worth your time and worth your investment. But yeah, from the bottom of my heart, it's a massive thank you for carrying us through season 1. And yeah, season 2, here we come. And I actually think we've almost locked in the first guest of season 3. So you're stuck
wow,
with me at least for the majority of the remainder of the year.
amazing. Wow. All right. Now, Mufaro, as you know incredibly well, there are 3 signature questions that you like to wrap things up with. So I'd love to know, Mufaro, what's one thing that you would do again?
I saw this coming. One thing that I would do again is go to uni and study music.
Yeah,
That
interesting.
Believe it that well, look, that was a big fight with my parents. It was an argument with
Yeah,
my parents to the point where I enrolled in a dual degree. So, initially, I enrolled in a Bachelor of Music, Bachelor of Business degree to sort of, give my parents the reassurance that if the music thing doesn't work out, at least I got a business degree to
there's
back it
something
up.
there.
But one semester in, I actually dropped the business side of the degree and then just stayed with the
Oh,
Bachelor
wow.
of Music. And I'm glad I did because had I not done that, I would have left there after 2 years, and I wouldn't have had the third and a half year that I had,
Mm,
which was probably in terms of my music career, one of the biggest years that I've had in music. That's the year that we did that
really?
sellout show. That's the year we
Yeah.
did our first festival. That's the year we won a $2,000 grant from the Brisbane government. Like that was a big
Ah,
year. So
nice.
yeah, I think one thing I'd do again is go to uni and study just music.
Yeah. That's awesome. And that honestly, the talk of people is that arts degrees, they cop a lot from people, saying, oh, you could this is self you could be self taught, but I appreciate that perspective that you have, the connections, the opportunities that you get just by
Yeah.
who the opportunities that are provided to you. So yeah, that's an awesome one.
Oh, yeah, and I
Now,
mean, like, on that 3rd year of uni again, that was the year I went to the Queensland Conservatorium in Brisbane in the jazz voice course. 3rd year students got to be tutored by Irene Bartlett, who was Austin Butler's vocal coach on the Elvis movie.
really,
Like,
the guy that
that's the caliber
yeah,
of people that, like, I got to work with, and you know what? Shout out to all of my uni, kind of my voice tutors. So, I had Ellie Hoyt, Dave Spicer, Kirsten Barati, like these were all massive, massive influences to my artistry and people who really inspired me, but also kind of got to work with some great local Brisbane musicians as well. Pete Walters, James Sandon. I got to have a class with this guy called Jose McLaughlin, who used to
hell yeah,
play in a band called Jerry and the Pacemakers. And for anyone
yeah,
who is a Liverpool fan, Jerry and the Pacemakers are the band that recorded "You Never Walk Alone," the very first kind of
really,
rendition of it.
wow,
I got to be taught by Jose. So yeah, like again, like
what a name as well.
right, Jose McLaughlin. Yeah, shout out to all of those people who kind of made my uni days great, but also my band, the Bear House slash Black Suede slash whatever they call themselves these days. The band name changes every time we have a gig. Uh, But yeah, they made my uni life the best. So yeah, again, a vocal shout out to Tom, Lockie, James, Regan, Josh, Nick. Who else did we play with in that band? Samantha, Aisha, Sophia, the other Tom, the other Josh. Like I was blessed to play with some really great musicians. And so yeah, I'm super grateful that I got to experience going to the con, but also just the connections that I made after that as well.
Yeah, nah, but
Sorry,
yeah,
that was like the
that's awesome.
longest answer to that question.
That's okay. That's okay. That's what we're here for. We're here for moments like that. You can't just, go off on bullet points. We're here for emotional and vulnerable responses, man.
100%.
Now, of course, something you'll never do again, something that you're leaving on the cutting room floor, something that you've changed for good.
Something I'll never do again is let someone convince me that I'm not good at what I do.
Mm,
Yeah. There's no long-winded explanation to that. That's all it is. I'll never let
yeah,
someone convince me that I'm not good at what I do.
nice, powerful. All right, and then potentially aligned with that, maybe the opposite of that. What's one piece of advice you wish that somebody had told you right at the start of your journey?
Yeah. So, sorry, this one's gonna be long-winded. I have a bit of background
That's all right.
as to why I asked this question. I asked this question because I received that advice once, and I wish I received it earlier in the journey.
Mm,
Um, One piece of advice that someone did tell me that I wish I was told at the start of my journey is that there's no such thing as aspiring.
mm,
There's no such thing as being an aspiring musician. There's no such thing as being an aspiring artist. There's no such thing as being an aspiring athlete. You're either doing it or you're not.
mm,
That was the advice given to me by a hero of mine who is Dr. Oliver Mtukudzi, who's like this massive legend in Zimbabwean music. And may he rest in peace. But I got the distinct honor of meeting him when he was here in Melbourne for a show. It would have been about 10 years now, actually. And because like my sister was kind of working behind the scenes on that show, I was able to meet with him in private as they were preparing to leave and sit down with him. And man, like I know they say never meet your heroes, but sometimes like just 5 minutes sitting down with someone who you look up to can
mhm,
change your life.
yeah.
And that's what he said to me. I
Well, we
said,
all need mentors.
well, 100%, 100%. And like, maybe I wouldn't go as far as calling him my mentor, but like just the fact
Mm,
that I said to him, I was like, look, like, what's one piece of advice you'd give to an emerging artist or an aspiring artist? And he said to me, there's no such thing as aspiring. You're either doing it or you're not. And I've carried that with me probably for the last 10 days is what that's something that I've carried with. So yeah, that's a piece of advice that I wish to pass on to.
Last 10 days, was this a recent one, was
Oh, sorry, last 10 years. Did I say 10
Yeah,
days?
wow. Yeah,
Last 10 years. It's something that I've carried with me for the last 10
I may
years
have
is.
misheard.
No, that's fine, but I just got to repeat it.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's the piece of wisdom that I wish to impart on emerging artists, emerging entrepreneurs, emerging athletes, emerging creatives is that there's no such thing as aspiring. You're either doing it or you're not. And if you're doing it, you're already there.
Yeah, amazing. Well, Mufaro, that feels like a wrap not only on season one, but on this sort of in between episode. I'm incredibly excited for season two. I know you are. Every time I speak to you, you're talking about ideas, you're talking about little bits, little details, people that may or may not be locked in yet. So I just wanted to say from me, thank you for letting me take over the host seat and letting me ask the questions on this episode.
Reese, thank you for being the host and for helping me with this special episode. I really appreciate you taking the time and asking those brilliant, brilliant questions. Thank you so much.
Of course, mate. Of course. Now, to everyone listening, thank you so much for supporting season one of Before We Take Off. Make sure you're following the podcast on Spotify, Apple Music, and YouTube. Stay connected on Instagram and LinkedIn, and keep an eye out for what's coming up next. This has been a special episode of Before We Take Off. I'm Rhys, that's Mufaro, and you all are wonderful.
You know what? We about to take off.